In our yesterday session, we are understanding as part of interfaces what are the rules we have to follow while we are implementing the interfaces we are understanding. So that means when we are creating an interfaces, so what is the concept of abstract method? I mean that means whenever we created an interface and if you are not provided implementation for a method as part of interface, those methods will be called as abstract methods. So when we can call a method as an abstract method is when the method doesn't have body. So that means only method signature is declared, but there is no logic. So in such case only we have to call always abstract methods. Same concept we have in classes also. So we can define abstract methods in classes also. So we will see that today continuation after interfaces. So, but by default in an interface, whenever we created an interface like this, and whenever we defined a method, that method will be called as abstract method. So, for example, yesterday we created method 1, method 2, right? So here, even though we are not given abstract keyword, but this method is considering as a abstract method. So that means internally Java will consider always these methods as a abstract method. So that means it will add a keyword called as abstract when it is compiling. As a developer, if you are giving also, no problem. Even if you are not giving public also, by default. So here, if you observe here in this interface, we just declared only method signature. Method signature means only just what is the return type, what is the method, what is the parameter, what are the method parameters. That is what we just created here, but there is no logic, there is no method body, there is no method body. So in those cases this method will be called as by default in interface abstract method, as well as it is a public method. So even if you are not giving public, so this line is equal to this line. So that means even here internally Java will consider always as a public as well as abstract. So even as a we are not provided anything, internally Java will consider always these methods as always as public and abstract methods only. So even if you given, no problem. If you are not given also, Java will consider always by default considering always as a public and abstract methods. So what is an abstract method? Is a method which doesn't have a method body. So if you declared only method signature without body, then those methods will be called as abstract methods. So like this. So that is what abstract method we discussed yesterday, and by default in interface if you define a method, that will become as a abstract method. After that we discussed a few other points also. So from an interface how many classes can we implement? So that means the point here it is I have one interface, and from that interface how many classes can we implement? We can implement any number of classes, guys. So if you see here class 1, class 2. So from single interface, you can define any number of classes. You can implement any number of classes. That means only that class 1 is implementing this interface, then it should provide implementation for all three abstract methods. Similarly, class 2 is implemented, then class 2 also provide implementation for all three methods. So in such a way, from single interface, we can implement many number of classes. It's not like only one interface, one class. No. From one interface, you can implement multiple interfaces. Sorry, multiple classes. So the after that we taken one more point. How many interfaces can we implement by using a class at a time? How many interfaces can we implement by using a class at a time? So in this case, the question is different. So for example, I have only one class, but at a time, how many interfaces can be implemented by a class? So yes, again more than one. So that means this scenario, second scenario. So here what's happening? XYZ is a class, A is an interface, B is an interface. So at a time it is implementing A comma B. Or if you have C, I mean one more interface also, yes, we can implement more than one interface. So it looks like something multiple inheritance. Multiple inheritance. When you discussed with respect to classes, C extends. So we discussed like C extends A comma B. So multiple inheritance is not supported in the classes point of view. I said why also because of the ambiguity. Because of the ambiguity, it is not supported. But here, with respect to class versus interfaces, class versus interfaces, when you are implementing more than one interface, okay, so there is no ambiguity problems. There is no ambiguity problems. You can do that. So compiler Java will allow us. So we will see that details also later. So that means in a simple point of view, what you have to understand here it is a class can implement more than one interface at a time. So after that, if class don't want to provide an implementation for an abstract method, then what we have to do? For example, assume the scenario here is like this. What is the question here? It is I have an interface and this interface is having five abstract methods, five abstract methods. Now from this interface, assume one class implementing the above interface. So implements what one class is implementing the above interface. Generally, what is the responsibility of this class is providing implementation for all five abstract methods. But assume this class provided implementation for only three abstract methods out of five. So that means it provided implementation only for three methods. So with respect to class, it's not completed 100 percentage. Yeah, with respect to class, it's not provided all of five abstract methods. Still two are pending. Still two abstract methods are pending. Still two abstract methods are pending. Then what we have to do in this case? So now this class is saying, I mean, as part of this class, there is nothing to provide implementation for these two abstract methods. Then what has to be done? So in such case, compiler will not allow us until and unless you are providing implementation to five abstract methods. Compiler will say still two methods are pending. But still C class is saying there is nothing to provide implementation for these two abstract methods. Some I mean partially implemented. Interface is not implemented fully by this class. Only three methods are implemented, but two is pending. Two or at least one is pending. But class is saying there is nothing to provide implementation. Then what has to be done? So in this case, we have a concept called as abstract classes that we will continue, that we will see right now only. So then we have to make our mark class as abstract class. What we have to do is we have to mark the class as a abstract class. So now this class will become as a abstract class. So what is an abstract class? We will see right away. We will see in today itself. So okay, so we will mark this class as a abstract class. So what is an abstract class? We will see that. I'll just come back to that point. Okay, so that is what we discussed here it is. And an interface can contain variables or not. Yes. As part of interface, we can define variables. But you may have a question. Okay, I define variable, fine. Something like name, whatever it is, Dilip Singh or Dilip IT, whatever it is. Then in the same interface, I don't have implementation. For example, I created two methods and two methods are without body. Then what is the use of variable? Then why? What is the purpose of variable? Why Java is allowing? When there is no, when we are not providing implementation to the methods as part of the interface, so only signatures we are providing. So that means we are telling to the classes implement based on this syntaxes, based on this method syntax or signature provide the implementation. But here we don't have implementation. Then what is the purpose of the variables in interface? So the purpose of variables in interface is same again. So assume again an interface. So in a real-time application point of view, I'm telling you, for example, an interface, and then that interface is implemented by more than one class, some reason, or maybe 10, 15 classes, assume like that. So these are all classes. These are all classes, etc. etc. So class 1, class 2, class 3, like that. Okay. So now etc. etc. So you can provide more than one class, more than one implemented classes. Okay, fine. Now assume this class is having somewhat 10 abstract methods or whatever it is, 5 abstract or 10, whatever it is, 5 abstract methods. Okay, now all classes are providing implementation for all 5 abstract methods. Now all 5 classes are providing implementation for 5 methods. Okay, cool. This is all we know that until methods point of view. Okay. So now in this case, assume all the classes are using some common data, some common value. So assume in this case, all classes are using some common values. All classes are using some common values, not variables, common values. So values will be defined as part of variables always. So common values, like for example, assume in this all implemented classes, they are using some company name. Assume like some variable name called as company name, and company name is they are implementing this project for the Dilip IT. So wherever they are using company name variable, wherever they want to use company name, something like that, everywhere Dilip IT value should come. Everywhere Dilip IT value should come. So it okay. So it's a fixed value with respect to all these implemented classes. Now what this class one is doing, they are creating a new variable like string company name like this. They are creating a new variable company name like this. And similarly, assume other class also creating one more variable like that. One more variable. Similarly, one more, I mean, other class also creating one more variable like this. It's all about they are creating a new variables in every individual class level. Okay, that is one kind of solution. But instead of that, what in this case interface is doing is, okay, classes, even I am providing one variable name called as common company name Dilip IT, something like that, string whatever it is. So what it is trying to say is, I am declaring one variable. So going further, in your classes, you no need to create a variable. Whenever you want a value called as Dilip IT value, so you no need to create any local variable or any instance variable in your class level. So you can start using directly. You can start. Why? Because these are all classes are implemented. So implemented means now see class 1 can directly access this variable. Class 2 can access directly this variable. Class 3 can access directly this variable. So this behavior we observed in the inheritance also, right? So it's not nothing but kind of inheritance also, guys. But only thing is inheritance point of view, you made class, I mean in our previous point of view, class versus class. Class extends class. So here what you did extends. So above one is parent, below one is child. In the child level, you can access parent variable. parent class variables we can access. That is what we saw in the inheritance. Now same behavior you are seeing here also. If you are observing or not, yeah. So in this case also, for example, assume class 1 is having some variable called as some name, whatever it is. Then that name variable child class can access directly. So because of the inheritance. So if you observe here, the bonding in between interface versus class also, maybe it's like implementation terminology wise, but the relationship point of view, inheritance relation only. It's just like maintaining parent child kind of relation only. So interface is the parent, class is the child, like that. So in this case, company name variable, you no need to create. All implemented classes are direct having access. Tomorrow assume if a value modified here, Dilip IT to some XYZ IT in the interface level, what will happen? The advantage is all implemented classes level, automatically the new value will be reflected. The new value will be reflected. And this variable will be called as a final variable generally. So by default, a variable in an interface is always called as static and final. So when you define a variable inside the interface like this, by default it will become static and final variable. So what is static and final? I'll tell you. So static variable, you know that you can access via class name if it is static variables. In this case, we can access via interface name. And only thing is we are not sure about the final variable. So I'll introduce what is final variable also. So in this case, only pending is we have to understand static, you know that. For the static variables, you no need to create the object. You can access via class name. Earlier when we discussed static variables, inside a class, okay, so let's take here. So what is the static variable? When we discussed as part of the class, we understood like it's not part of object creation. We can access via class name. The variable belongs to which class, based on that class name we can access via class name. So that means simply what we will do, we will make like class name dot static variable name. So this is what we did in our variables level. Now the same variable whatever you defined in the interface level, by default static and final, even though you are not given static and final. For example, assume I given here one more variable also, string contact contact email id equal to something like Dilip at the rate gmail.com. So I given some mail ID, whatever it is, some support email ID or contact email ID, whatever it is. Now, in this case, this contact email ID, even though I'm not given static and final keywords, okay, it's a static variable only. By default, it is a static, even though you are not provided. So that means this, whatever the variable we declared here is like this. Static, internally Java is considering always as a static as well as final. So with respect to static, we are talking right now. So you know that, right? If it is a class, generally how you access the static variables, you take in class name dot static variable name. Now same thing if you are applying with respect to interfaces. Okay, so you defined a static variable and it's an interface. So in this case also, when it comes to interfaces, you cannot create the object. Why? Because interfaces first of all doesn't have any body. Interfaces and interface methods doesn't have any body. So when there is no logic, there is no point to create object, right? So that's why by default they made variable as a static variable. So in this case, if you define static variable inside the interface, so you can access directly via interface dot variable name, interface name, nothing but name dot variable name. So if you want to access that variable wherever you want, outside of that interface, you can access directly via interface name dot variable. So for example, now class when one extends an interface, this interface one, sorry, implements, so interface one. So in such case, you can access these variables directly, guys. So this is the interface. First of all, in this case, one class can access directly these two variables. So there is no need of interface also. Why? Because if you observe here, there is some kind of child versus parent relationship. So child versus parent relationship. Class is a child, interface is a parent. So here also inheritance is there. So it may be not class to class, but class versus interface. But if in this case one is a child, interface is a parent. So that means child can access parent properties directly. So such a way you can access name and as well as contact email ID both directly in this class. Now assume there is no one more class I am defining, class 2, and in this case I want to access interface 1 variables. So what is the difference between class 1 and class 2? So class 1 is having some relationship with interface. So that's why direct access. Class 2 doesn't have any relationship with interface, but still it want to access only variable of that interface. Is it possible? Means yes, possible. But how to means you have to take reference of the interface. Like however I said here, when you want to access variable of an interface, you can access direct by using variable that interface name dot variable name. So here you can access via directly. You have direct access. So you don't need to access like interface name dot variable. But here you can access, yes, we can do that. But how to do it? Interface one dot variable name. So like interface one dot something like name. Then you can access. Then internally compiler or executor will go to that interface and it will pick up the value of name. Okay, so these are the rules. Let's see now. What I am doing here it is. Okay, so class 1 I am taking. Only variables point of view, let's understand now. Okay, so if you observe here, class 1 implementing interface 1. If I go to interface, I defined two variables and two abstract methods. So as per our rule, first we have to provide implementation for two methods. So that is the compiler is scolding us. Add an implemented methods. It is saying like there are some methods which are not implemented based on this interface relationship. So do that. So what we did, okay, we provided implementation, assume like that. So void methods or whatever it is, we provided, assume like that. Now my point here it is, it's all about variable access. Now can I access variables in this method directly from this interface or not? Yes. See here, sysauto. Understand guys, this is very important. These things also, these are also real time things only. We will use variables inside the interfaces. In real time projects also we will do that. So that too especially static and final variable point of view we will use it. And I'll define again final variables topic in some other way also I'll explain you as an individual point of view. Now we are understanding in the interface point of view. I'll explain what is final variable also. Okay, so see here company name colon. I'm accessing variable name called as company. Sorry, what is that variable name? So I don't have name, sorry, company name, right? I'll change it instead of that. Okay, so I just renamed the variable name. So now see here. See, I can access company variable. So this company name variable belongs to what, guys? Interface 1. Interface 1. So internal it contains a value of Dilip IT. So Eclipse is just. Now if you observe here, it is SF. So Eclipse is showing like S and F. So what is the meaning of S and F is static and final variable. Okay, maybe we declare that's why it is showing. Now see here, same variable I am accessing again from here. I mean one more email, contact email ID. So now I am giving here contact email ID. Okay, cool. So now I can access this one also. Now see, this is also what Eclipse is saying, showing us static and final variable. What is from where? The father of this variable is interface 1. Okay, and the value is Dilip IT. So that means you are able to access these two variables directly without interface name also. Without interface name also. So why? The reason is you are having a parent to child relationship. So this is also one kind of inheritance only, guys. This is also inheritance only. Child, parent. Child can access parent properties. That's the reason you are able to access without reference. Without reference. So let's call this method now. Class 1 yn1 equal to new class 1 method. So just now I'm calling this method, but here you need to observe without interface name and all I'm accessing it. So you got the values Dilip IT and these things. Okay, that is okay. Now next second point what I said, in case if a class want those variables but without implementation, is it possible? Means yes, it is possible. Let's create one more class 2. So under observe all these rules and regulations, and please remember all these rules and regulations. You have to make your own notes. You have to remember all these points. How you will remember based on your comfort. You have to do that. Now see here, there is no relationship with the interface. So that's why I don't want to do anything. I don't want to do. I mean that I don't want to do anything in the sense no implementation for the abstract methods. But in this case, some reason I want company name and email ID. Company name and contact email ID. So you observed you already knows that you want only company name and email ID. You already knows that the data is already available in one of the interface called as interface 1 because you're already defined. So now you got an idea. Okay, let me instead of I am creating my own variables here. Okay, can I access from the interface or not? Yes, we can access. Get it from interface. It's possible. Now you felt like let me access directly from the interface. What? You want to access those variables like however class 1 did, right? Like this, you are trying to access in such a way. You are trying to access in such a way. Maybe assume if it is an instance variable point of view also, I'll do that also. Public void company information, something like that. Okay, I'm just defined one more method. So here, see, I'm directly accessing. Let me copy paste again. Control C. And see here, I'm directly trying to access. Now, compiler is giving an error like, what is this? What is this? In an individual class point of view, I don't see these two instance variables you created inside the class. There is no declaration. And you don't have relationship with either interface or parent classes, nothing. Then from where I have to refer these two variables? That is what the question here it is. So in this case, what is the solution? I said you can access via interface name. Why via interface name? Because with respect to interface, those are all always static variables. Even though you are not giving static keyword, observe the point, guys. We are not given static keyword. In class, if it is a class, when you declared static variable inside a class, 100% you have to give the static keyword if you want to declare that variable as a static. Otherwise, it will become non-static. But in interfaces level, there is no concept of instance variables. Understand the point. So that means what you have to understand in this case, in interfaces, there is no concept, there is no type, there is no concept of instance variables. That means there is no concept of non-static variables. By default, only static variables you can create, even though if you are not giving static keyword, interface level compiler will always add a static keyword only. So that means if in a static point of view, what you can do, you can take the interface name. What is the interface name? Interface one. So interface one dot C, I'm able to access because it's a static variable. So interface dot I'm able to access. So similarly here also you can access if you want to. Now it's up in any class you can access these two variables. Whether you are having in okay implementation relationship or doesn't matter. If you have implementation relationship like this class, then you are having direct access because this became parent for this class. But in this case, there is no relation. There is no relation with implementation something, but you can access via interface name dot company name and all. Okay, so this is how variables we can access from the implemented classes as well as non-implemented classes from an interface. From an interface. Okay, so it's all about static point of view we understood now. So it's all about what we understood right now. By default static variable I said as an interface point of view. That's why you are able to access in this case by using interface name. By using interface name. So let's execute. See here you are able to get the data from class 2 also. But there is no implementation relationship because it's a static variable. Now next point is what I said by default static and final. By default static and final. So with respect to static we understood now. So simply even if you are not given static keyword also internally it will take static. That's why in the class 2 point of view you are accessing directly via interface name point of view in any other classes also. Okay, this is clear. Now, next point. What is final? What is the point of final? I said final variable, right? Yeah. So let's take final variable concept also. Final variable. I said a new word called as final variable. So what is the final variable? Understand here it is. Yeah. So in Java, final is a keyword. First of all, it is a keyword. That means this is given by the Java language. The word, final word is given by the Java language for a purpose. Now, final, by using final keyword in Java, we can define final variables. We can define final variables. Okay, that is what we have to discuss right now. But I mean, as well as final methods. So there is a concept available, final methods. This I will introduce at polymorphism after polymorphism or some point of time level. That's what I said. We will see different scenarios, different levels, final variables, and then final classes also. So I will discuss final variable right now. Final method we will discuss after some point of time in a right time. Okay, after discussing method overriding, then I will discuss. And final classes, yes, I will discuss hopefully uh, abstract. After abstract classes, I'll discuss final classes because after interfaces, I'll discuss abstract classes. Then I'll discuss final classes. So then it's very easy to understand. So let's understand final variable. So what you have to remember from this is by using final keyword, final concept, you can define three types. Final variables you can create, final methods you can write, final classes also you can write. So let's understand what is final variable here. It is. What is final variable? Where and all you can create. Let's understand now. So let's understand as a individual point of view what is a final variable. Yes. When we declare when we declare a variable as final in a class. First I am talking with respect to class guys because final variables we can create inside class also. So what is my point here? It is leave some time interface just for some time. First understand individually what is final variable. Then we can apply same thing to the interface level. So first of all, with respect to class, can we define our means? Yes, we can define. When we declared a variable as a final class, a variable with final keyword in a class, so that will become final variable. But what is the nature of final variable? What is the behavior of final variable? So we need to understand right now. Okay, so as of now, when you written the Java classes, what you know, you will write some class name, whatever it is, something like assume some company information, whatever it is. Okay, string name equal to something. I take an XYZ technologies or whatever it is. So some value also I take. So this is a simple non-static variable. But I said if you declared a variable as a final variable, I mean keyword final keyword, then that will become as a final variable. Okay, that is okay. But what is the reason behind it? So why Java is given this final? Now this became automatically final variable. But what is the point of making final? So what is the name? What is the functionality? So definitely there is some functionality behind the final variable. So what is the functionality? Let's understand. Here it is. I'll explain you. I'll do one thing. I'll create a new package for final point of view. New project, final keyword. So I set final classes, final methods, final variables, right? So that's why I'll take separate application. Next, finish it. Okay, so leave sometimes interfaces aside. Yeah, final keyword. Let's come back here. Final com dot. See in the package level name level, whenever I given final, it is compiler is same saying some error is package name is not valid, final is used because in the package names level, variable names level, you cannot use the reserved keywords. That's why. If you made some small change also no problem. Then it is okay. Okay, so I'll take like okay. So see here now. String company name. Understand very carefully. It's good also. Now in this case, assume I know the value, so I'm giving like something like ABC technologies or whatever it is, XYZ technologies. Fine. So now I created one method also, public void company display company information. So I created a method now. Sys out of company name. Okay, fine. Okay, so now this is okay. So now let me write a main method also. Now what I'm doing, I'm calling this method or else this variable also. Let's understand what I'm trying to say first. company equal to new company details. So in this case, as of now, we are not done anything newly. We are not involved any keyword called as final also. Company dot, I'm calling the method called as display information. So let's execute now. So XYZ technologies is printed. Fine, that's okay. Now the point here it is, now in this method display company information level, some reason company name equal to I given as ABC Technologies. ABC Technologies. Okay, now I'm printing again company name information. Okay. Okay, so now let's print it. Now let's execute the program again. What happened? XYZ Technologies, ABC Technologies. So in this case, what you are doing, you are modifying the value of variable. You are modifying the value of variable. So what is the modifying? From XYZ to you change it to ABC. Okay, so you made that. But some reason assume sometimes some variable values should not change at any cost. Once it is created with some value, that's a fixed value, permanent value, constant value. So generally that means it's a fixed value. For example, assume you are implementing a project for the XYZ technologies. So wherever you are using company name, always it should come as XYZ only. Okay. So that means the company name is always a permanent value. It will never change like some 1 minute XYZ, 1 minute ABC, 1 minute in another class level it is a okay something like Dilip, in another class level it is something like Infosys. No, it's not like that. Wherever I am using company name, by default it should be displayed in this format itself, and it is always XYZ Technologies. But in this case, what happened? I am able to modify this variable value. So that's why here it printed as XYZ, here it printed as ABC. Now by some, okay, now I want to stop that behavior in this case, because in some of the variables scenario point of view, some of the variables point of view, value once initialized for the first time, that should be permanent value. That should be permanent value. Permanent or constant or fixed, whatever name you can take it up. Permanent or constant or fixed value. So it's a fine. That's what. So what is the point here? It is I want to make sure one variable value never ever changed at any cost. Once I created a variable and its value, once initialized a value, that value should not change at any cost. So that behavior I want to apply to this variable. As of now, what happened? The same class or different class, whoever it is, you are able to access that variable. Accessing variable is okay, but we should not allow modifying the value. But I am able to modify it here. I am able to modify here it is. That's why I can see ABC now, but I don't. I want to stop it. So now understand the word why they given final. Now understand what is the word they given final. So in generally we know that, right? I think in the movies also we will say, I mean, some dialogues we will hear like, this is final plan. This is the final thing. That means there is no changes afterwards. When we will use a word called as final in our real life also, something is okay. When generally, I mean, in our real life scenario point of view also, when we will use a word called as final, things things will not change hereafter. Like that, whenever we decided this is the fixed one, this is the final one, this is the final trip plan, There is no more changes in this final. There is no changes in the venue. There is no more changes in the date and time. It's a final. It's a final. It's a final. It's a final. So that means when we will say something is a final, things will not change hereafter. So then generally in our real life also we will use a word called as final. Right? Same 100% is they applied here. Now what they are trying to say, what we have to say, trying to say in this case is, I want to say company name XYZ Technologies is a final value. That means hereafter, either it is the same class or different class, whoever it is, but I don't want to allow changing the value. So it's a final value, final value. This is a final value. So hereafter, nobody cannot change this value. So then I have to make this variable as a final variable. So see here final variable. Now what happening? Immediately see the moment I added final variable, final keyword to this variable, what happened guys? Now see compiler is saying the final field company name cannot be assigned. It is saying you may use it wherever you want, but you don't have privileges, you don't have rights to modify it. So what is the point in this case? We lost the, so here there is no modification rights. Even the same class, owner is same class, whatever, whether it is the same class or different class, whatever it is. But now in this case, what you are saying, modification rights got gone. So that means why? Because I made it as a final. Now if I remove final, so that means in this case, what I am trying to say, it's a normal variable. Anyone can change variable at any point of time, no problem. But if I made final, the moment I made final, what's happening in this case? See, the compiler is saying, hey man, how will you change variable of company name to something else? Because developer mentioned as a final variable. So that means this value should not change any point of time as part of this variable. So like that, developer given an instruction to me as final. So that's why I am not allowing you to change the variable name. I mean variable value, not name, variable value. So like that, compiler is giving the error. Now at any cost, you cannot change this variable name. Wherever you go, now you cannot change, but you can use it wherever you want. Okay, so that is what the final variable concept here it is. Now see, there is no privileges of modifying the value. If you are trying to modify, compiler is scolding, compiler is giving the errors. So that means now our requirement is fulfilled. So wherever you go, with respect to company name variable as part of this class, it is always XYZ technologies only. So that is what final variable here it is. So now define a statement. What is a final variable means? When you will define final variable is when requirement point of view, okay, demanding a variable value should not change once it is initialized. A variable value should not change once it is initialized. So in such case, you will make in such case we will mark that variable with the final keyword. Then you are making that variable as a final keyword. So what is the point you understood now? Now for example, if I return string email ID equal to something xyz at the rate, something like Dilip at the rate, or info at the rate xyz, info at the rate xyz technologies.com, something whatever it is. Now I define a variable. So yes, in this case it's not a final variable. So now anyone can change this variable. So for example, now I'm created object, right? So see here, company name dot what, email ID equal to, I'm changing the name to info to something else, contact, support, or whatever it is, support at the rate gmail.com, something, or xyz.com, whatever it is. So why in this case I didn't made email ID as a final variable means my requirement is saying, so there is a chance of changing this variable value email ID. Sometimes it might be info, sometimes it might be support, sometimes it might be contact, but most of the times info. But sometimes you have to make sure the value as support, sometimes as a contact at xyztech.com, like that your requirement is demand. So by but majority of the times you decide okay it is always info only, but sometimes you have to make sure it is as a contact, sometimes it is as a like what x something like some variable name point of view, some value like contact. So like that you have to make sure this variable value is changing every time, but company name is not changing at any cost. So then you will make this variable as a final, this will not as a final. So that means now in this method it want as a contact, in this method it want as a support, in this method. So like that based on that your things will change. So that's why you are not made, it's you made simply as a simple variable point of view. So see here contact. Why? Because just before that you made contact, company name, email ID as a contact. So by that's why it is printed like that. But everywhere XYZ. Even though if you are trying to modify company name, immediately it is giving the compiler method. That is what about the final variable. So once a value is initialized and that should not be changed every time, that's the final value, then you will make those variables as a final variables. Now, at what scenarios you will make variables as a final variables means generally like company names, established years, India capital. I mean something like that. The value will not change again and again. It's a fixed value. For example, in mathematics, we have pi value, right? So in a universal pi value is always same. Something like 3.1, something will be there, right? So it's a fixed value. It's a constant value. So when you want to make sure as part of your project implementation, a value as a constant value. Assume you are working for a project called a Gmail project. So now, wherever you are using a name called as company name, so it should display always Google. So that means yes, Gmail owner is Google always. It will never change. For 1 second it is Microsoft. In the another class level it is something like some other company. No, it's not like Google. So that means in such cases you can take those variables as a final variables. So that what is the advantage of that is accidentally if any other developer, now you may got one more question also. Sir, if I remove final here and then what is the point? I will use always okay company name wherever I want without modifying. Okay, that you know that you created the variable as a developer, senior developer, you know all that you felt like everywhere you will maintain XYZ only. But some reason, some developer came, some developer joined into your team, or maybe someone else, or after 6 months you only forgot that, or maybe whatever the reason is. In this class, assume 2000 lines of logic is there. You declared at line number 5 level, but in the line number 1500 level, you are changing some, you are making some logic, and you given this line company name equal to like this. Then what will happen? It is misleading. So what's happening? It's allowing. Then automatically in that logic level, what will happen? The variable name will come as ABC technology. So some places XYZ, some places ABC, then data is mismatching. So instead of you are having overconfidence like that, simply if you made final, then in this class, wherever you are accessing that variable, it's allowed. But wherever you are trying to modify, immediately compiler will start giving the error. You don't have privileges to modify the variable because it's a final variable. Once final, there is no modification. Now you can ask one more question, sir, can we modify final variable value or not? No, there is no way to modify final variable value. So if you want to modify means in the root level only you have to modify. Now here only you have to make sure again ABC technology. The first time when you created and assign the value, there only you have to again change it. Now what will happen? Automatically every place level again ABC will come. ABC will come. So this is the concept of final variable in Java language. So you can define final variables in the classes also. Okay, you can define final variables in the classes also. Now come back to the interfaces. Now what is the word I used yesterday? By default, if you define a variable on the interface level, it's a static as well as final also. So that means now as part of the final variables, we understood what is a final variable concept right now. What is a final variable and all? We understood a good idea, good example. So now let's open our interfaces concept again. Go to the interfaces, go to class one. Yeah. Okay, and interface one. So see here now, I have company name Dilip IT, contact ID, email ID, right? Now go to the class one. Class one is implementing the interface. I'm able to access it. Let's try to modify now. So let's try to modify. Let's try to modify. I'm giving company name as some other value. ABC technologies, whatever it is, some other value. Now, in this point of view, company name, so I will remove this one also. By default, I said, right? Maybe you said, sir, no, sir, you given final. That's why it's not allowing. Okay, I'm removing that one also. I given simply string and company name and Dilip IT. Okay, company name is Dilip IT, contact email ID is dilipit@gmail.com. Now see here, what's happening? When I'm trying to make sure company name.abc technologies, not allowing. Point number one. Now you say no, sir, you given directly variable name. That's why it's a problem. Let's give try with interface name dot variable name. Okay, that is also I'll try. So see here, then also what it is saying, then also not allowing. So the moment outside of the interface or whenever you are trying to modify that variable, okay, where you created variable here it is. So for the first time you created and initialized the value here. So apart from that area, if you are trying to modify that variable value by using any other option like interface name or maybe as a child point of view, you are trying to access directly whatever the way it is not allowed. Why it's not allowing? It's not a final variable in the interface. But why means, yes, in Java the rule is defined as it's not allowing here and here. Either you cannot access directly, I mean accessibility you are having. You can read the value, but you cannot modify. You cannot modify here it is. So wherever you are using company name, it is always Dilip IT only. But you don't have a privilege of modifying. But in interface point of view, if you observe here, I did not given the final. I did not given the final. So that means what happened? By default final. That's why I said by default final. So that means when you define a variable internally, in the memory point of view or in the Java runtime execution point of view, compilation point of view, what it will consider is the rule is designed as in the interface every time it is a final variable. Every time it is a static variable. Whether as a developer you given or not, it doesn't matter. If you given it will take. If you are not given then it will take. It will add internally and it will apply static and final. First of all, why they given static? I said it's an interface. For interfaces you cannot create the objects. There is no way of creating objects. So that's why if it is a assume if it is a non-static variable, you know that non-static variables will be accessible only by using object outside of the class. If it is a static variable, you can use by using the class or interface. So in this case for interfaces you cannot, there is no point, there is no concept of creating objects. So that means there is no way of dealing with the non-static variables. So the next option what is left, static variables is left. So in the static variables point of view, no need of object. You need either class name or interface name. So here I have interface name. So that's the purpose in this case Java made a variable by default as a static and final variable. By default as a static and final. Static is the purpose of accessibility by using interface name. Final is the purpose of no one should not modify this value again and again. So the reason is what? I'll tell you one more. Why Java made interface variable as a final variable. So if you observe here, I said what guys? One interface can be implemented by n number of classes. Now, by the time class 1 implementing this variable, I mean this interface, class 1 feeling like company name equal to Dilip IT. Class 1 is feeling like, okay, I want Dilip IT value only. Now class 2 is also want Dilip IT. But class 3 level, assume if I given a privileges of modifying, now by some reason class 3 level, the logic, some reason, they modified company name equal to some XYZ. XYZ. So in this case, what's happening? The modification, whatever you are doing right now here in this moment, the modification, is it affecting only in this class? No. You are modifying this variable in case if permission is given. Then this XYZ is coming here. Then automatically the XYZ value is injected here or referenced here and other classes also. But other classes want only Dilip IT. Other classes want only Dilip IT. Now unnecessarily if I give him privileges because of this third class, all other classes are getting disturbed with that real value, with that value Dilip IT. So that's why Java thought like when on one interface multiple classes are implemented, so we will make sure all classes are always using same value and we should not give privileges to any class for the modifying the value. So to stop that behavior, what? They made it as a final by default. So that's what we understood in the class now. If as a developer itself, I don't want to make sure nobody can change this value in a class level, I'm making that variable as a final variable. But now similarly in interface point of view also, that's what their intention is. So that's why by default, static and final. Static is the purpose of accessibility by using interface name. Final is the purpose of stopping the modification of value. Now I will ask you one more thing. String, hmm, contact name, contact email ID, contact number, something. Okay, so see here what's happened. Variable declaration, declaration means creation without value in interface is allowed or not. Variable declaration without value in interface is allowed or not. So nothing but this is what the behavior I made now. Okay, so now this is what. So in this case, we discussed about it. It's okay. Now it's a static and final. That's why we are able to access. I mean, we can access this variable and we are unable to modify it also. But in the same interface, I created one more variable called as contact number, and that contact number without any value. Now, if you think in a common sense point of view, in a common sense point of view, interface is not provided the value. Okay, interface not given the value, and at the same time this interface is implemented by class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, like that, assume like that, and at the same time you are not giving privileges to modify the value. Okay, you are not giving a chance of no modification, you are not giving that rights to the implementation classes. Then in such case, classes are not doing the modification because classes don't have the permission to the modification because it's a final variable. And as a parent you are not assigned any value, then who will assign value to this? As an interface, you are not assigned, and at the same time, you are not giving chance to implemented classes. You are not assigned and you are not allowing others. Then how this variable will be assigned with value? Then what is the point of declaring this variable? So you are not provided the value and you are not allowing others. Then how this variable will be initialized? So that is the reason without value in interface you cannot define a value. Like class C, in class what is the concept? You can define a variable. It's up to your choice. For example, if you see here string name, yes, I can define a variable without variable. If you made final here again, see again here also same problem. What it is trying to say, even in a individual class point of view also, when you given final, it is saying initialize the value. When you made final variable, so what is the point you can understand in the final point of view is, when you created a final variable, initialize the value immediately. We have to initialize the value immediately. Final variable value should be initialized while declaring. So that means by the time you should ready with value also. If you don't have the value, you cannot make the final variable. No, you will say no, 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 I will assign name after some time, but I will make it as final. It's not allowed. Because what is the concept of final? Once you created a final variable, you are not giving chance to anyone else in the same class also. You are not giving chance to modify. Then how will you assign? So that's the reason Java is saying, if you want to make a final variable, initialize the value also immediately. Then only I will allow to make it as a final variable. If you are not giving the value, then I will not allow you to make that variable as a final also. So then non-final variable point of view, whatever it is. Now same rule if you are applying at class interface level, same thing. You are not allowing, you are not assigned, and you are not allowing others, then how this value will be initialized? So that, and at the same time, what is the rule we understood right now? Final variable value should be initialized while declaring. So in this case, whether you not given final, but in interface perspective, it is always final. So that's why in this case, what it is the error, see here, the blank final field, what it is saying, final field, contact number may not have been initialized. So it is saying like it is a final variable, please assign a value. So then you said, okay. Then if I given the value, the moment the error is gone. So something, the value I given, contact number, whatever it is, the error is gone. So what you understood again in the interface point of view, variable declaration without value in interface is allowed or means no. Because answer is what? Because it's a final variable. It's a final variable. So whenever it is a final variable, the rule is what? This is what the rule. Final variable value should be initialized while declaring. So you are not declaring the value. That's why what you will do, you will get the compile time error. You will get the compile time error. So this is the concept of final variable in Java. So it's not okay. So final variable is an individual topic. At any point of time tomorrow, if you want a variable value should not change, you can define that variable as a final variable. So generally final variable values we will take for the constant names like company name, established year. These values will not change every time, right? These are all permanent year things. Like my date of birth year, Dilip date of birth year. It is always something 1989, something like that. It's always 89 until my death. It will not change every time. So that kind of fixed values point of view. So if I given something like integer my date of birth year, Dilip date of birth year, something like that. As in this way, what will happen? If a person comes and assign 2024, it will allowed. So sorry, that this is an interface, right? I'm class point of view, I'm telling you. Yeah, it will allowed. So one person will give 2024, one person will give 1919, one person will give 1800 also. But in reality, it should not change at any point of time. So I want to give like this. So I given like final. Now nobody can change this value. It's a fixed value, it's a permanent value. In such case, I made it as a final. If I remove final, what will happen? in the logic level, by default I given this, but this person thought like, let me give some other value also, 2024. Yes, it's allowed. So ultimately, what is the value you are seeing? Date of birth year is 2024. So it's a data is mismatch. So in such case, if I felt like it's a fixed value, nobody should not change every time. So this is always fixed. No one should not change. Then see when they are trying to do that, it's not allowing. So generally in such cases you will define the final variables case. And in interfaces, when you define a variable, by default it will become as a final. By default it will become as a static. So that's why the statement I given, like in interface, if we can create the variables, and those variables can be accessible by every implemented class, but every variable is a by default static and final. Static and final. If it is a final variable means you have to initialize the value always. You have to initialize the value always. You have to initialize the value always. So what we discussed so far is variables inside the interfaces. So why it is static we discussed, why it is final, and we discussed what is final also. It's not only interface related, it's an individual concept. You can create final variables wherever you want in any class. In any class level you can create it. No one will stop you. But same functionality being used in the interfaces also by default as a final variable. So this line is equal to this line internally, Java compilation point of view. Even if you are given nothing, if you are not given also, no problem. Static final. No, okay. So that means when you are in the projects, when we are creating variables in the interfaces level, we will not give static and final. I mean, because as a developer, you should have that knowledge. Okay, by default, it is a static and final. Simply you will define, and you will understand like once the value is initialized here, no one can change. It's a final variable. Okay. So that is all about the final variables and variables inside the interfaces point of view. Are you clear, guys? Okay. Oh, so what we will do? So with this, what we are done here it is so far. With this, what we done so far here it is how we are defining the variables and what are the rules and regulations for the variables inside the interfaces point of view we discussed. So still we are having pending with inheritance with interfaces. So I'm not taking this today. I'll continue this tomorrow. So it's a very simple, just like our inheritance what we did with the classes, same point of view here also. But only thing is via in between interfaces we are doing that. Yes, inheritance with interfaces also we can do that. I already given you yesterday some small overview also, same point of view. So this way we will discuss tomorrow again the inheritance with interfaces, and then we'll move to the abstract classes. Once we are done with that, then the next concept is abstract classes. Okay, abstract classes. But there is a concept available, static methods and default methods in the interfaces, that I will discuss after the OOPS principle. So there is no relation with static and default methods as part of the OOPS principles. Whatever is introduced in the Java 8, static and default methods are the interfaces that we will discuss individually after the OOPS principles. Static and default methods and interfaces. So I will discuss, but after the OOPS principle, like once we are done with abstraction, polymorphism, encapsulation, then an individual point of view, again we will take same concept and we will discuss it. Okay, so tomorrow we'll see this for some time and then we'll move to the abstract classes. So what is abstract classes and all, we'll see tomorrow session. So very important guys, real time concepts. So don't ignore, please try to understand each and every word, each and every point very clearly. So that's why I'm going this much in detail and very slowly and all this information, so that these are all things are very, very important in a real time perspective. Okay, so that's all for today. Let's connect and next session, and we will see interfaces with inheritance, and then we'll go with the abstract classes also. Yeah, thank you.